Stick a camera in the face of a WWE superstar during a DVD documentary and they'll fart out the same platitudes every single time. Amongst "that's why he's one of the greatest of all time" for the mushy closing montage, or the "nobody knew if he'd be the same after the injury" soundbite to build up a heroic return, everybody from Steve Lombardi to Stephanie McMahon will unleash the company-mandated favourite. It was just who he was for real, but with the volume turned up. It's odd that the company would champion such a philosophy so frequently. It undermines creative as the all-conquering star makers if they simply take a performer and just tell them to ramp up their own personality. I mean, sure, it adds a lovely slice of realism if we can believe that the figures we're watching in the ring are pretty much exactly the same as when they go home. Undertaker probably sleeps in a coffin, Bayley has zero personal space issues, and Ryback is likely banned from every buffet within 5 minutes of his home. It's obviously not as cut and dry as the squawking heads would have viewers believe, but out there personas have had mixed blessings over the years. It takes a good performer to get any gimmick over. It takes a great performer to thrive with a mismatched one. I'm WhatCulture's Adam Cleary, and these are 10 wrestling gimmicks that were nothing like the wrestlers who portrayed them. Number 10, Papa Shango. As the Godfather, Charles Wright was one of the few performers to eventually be given a persona almost perfectly in sync with the man he was in real life. All he had to do before that was pretend that he was a voodoo practicing mixed martial artist. The early 90s character of Papa Shango was most kindly described as a cartoonish force. Much maligned these days due to some of the humorous in hindsight segments with the Ultimate Warrior, his voodoo was a powerful force until, well, it wasn't. With relentless losses to both the Warrior and WWE champion Bret Hart signposting him as little more than a bothersome mid-carder, Wright nonetheless portrayed his character with convincing aplomb, committing to the opportunity with enough vim and vigour to ensure the gimmick's still warmly thought of today. Number 9, Goldust. During the celebrated Wrestling with Shadows documentary, Bret Hart noted how little Dustin Runnels was like the Goldust character he magnificently portrayed. He wasn't wrong either. Runnels agreed to the gimmick without having a goddamn clue what Vince McMahon was even really pitching. A famous phone call between the two allegedly resulted in Runnels giving the golden gimmick a go after being too scared to ask what androgynous meant. Regardless though, Goldust was a magnificent character even through the choppiest waters of an experimental attitude era. Though the performer underneath the paint suffered multiple hardships between 2 decades in and out of the gimmick, his personal and professional renaissance means Goldust lives on as a wizened old head on a youthful roster. Number 8, Demon Kane. By far and away the easiest entry to prove on this list, somehow the monster that sent kids scurrying behind their sofas when he debuted in 1997 was the same dork caught absolutely pissing himself during Kid Rock's Hall of Fame speech. Presented to the world as the demonic mute brother of The Undertaker, his body burned and his mind warped, the Demon Kane would slowly over 20 years morph into the actual mayor of Knox County, Tennessee. While it's nice that his true ambitions of small-scale political office were eventually realized, nothing in the history of wrestling has worked on such a contrast. From a monster who could make fire shoot out of the ring, to a bald man in a suit who makes decisions on water rates. It's still real to me, damn it. Number 7, Yokozuna. At Greatest Royal Rumble, Hiroki Sumi, a wrestler so unknown that even WWE.com had to ask who he was, trotted down to the ring for a face-off with Mark Henry. One of the odder moments during a very odd night, the story goes that Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman wanted Yokozuna at the show, but hadn't heard that he died some 18 years prior. We're all human. A branch from the same enormous family tree that gave life to The Rock, Roman Reigns, the Usos, and countless others, Yoko's heritage was traded out for a sumo wrestler gimmick he was only too happy to indulge in. The already hefty Samoan gained mass to such a degree that using him became problematic for WWE. Despite numerous attempts, he never managed to drop enough weight to stage a return and passed away in the year 2000. News that just somehow didn't make it to Saudi Arabia, apparently. Number 6, Lex Luger. With skin the same shade as a garden shed and red, white, and blue bicep tassels squeezing some added vascularity out of his mammoth muscles, it was easy to see why Vince McMahon liked Lex Luger. Seen as the perfect instant replacement to the recently departed Hulk Hogan, Luger was just never comfortable as a babyface. Even the Lex Express, one of the company's single most expensive pushes in history, wasn't enough to make fans believe in a gimmick that Luger himself couldn't get in the groove for. Typically, Vince's interest in it dissipated almost immediately despite keeping Lex locked into main events up to the following year's WrestleMania. Fans had rejected the character, as had the man performing it, and no miniature American flags were going to win them back over. It wasn't until his heel run in WCW that we saw the real Lex. Number 5. Hollywood Bob Holly. Was Bob Holly just misunderstood in his own time? On the one hand, absolutely yes he was. He called Michael Cole a bitch and reportedly suggested that WWE should bin off Austin and The Rock to, and I quote, give him the belt. But was all this aggro just him working the boys backstage as a way of maintaining a persona as a complete misery? No, not at all, no. This deal was indeed real. Holly was a monumental house and proud of it. It's why his hardcore Holly gimmick resonated so long after his sparky plug persona had sunk. People looked at the muscular southerner and could feel the rage bursting out of his biceps well before he got in there and slapped the taste out of some poor jobber. Falling into a common wrestling trap, a reliance on Holly's surname served as inspiration for the gimmick. Bob Holly was many things, but glamorous movie star was categorically not one of them. The ill-suited angle didn't garner much success for him during his swing through various southern territories and briefly WCW, but it did at least spotlight him enough to earn him his first WWE deal. Every cloud. Number 4. Bob Backlund. Bob Backlund has spent the last 2 decades admirably portraying himself as an unhinged genius thanks to a remarkable second life as a psychopathic heel. Work that largely goes unheralded during a troubling financial time for WWE. The long-standing former champion had returned to the company in late 1992 as an even more reserved version of the man Vince McMahon deemed not fit to be the face of his aggressive national expansion, opting instead to go for Hogan. Fair enough. The differences between Bob and the Hulkster were stark then, but substantially less so when Mr. Backlund began wailing down the lens after snapping on Bret Hart. The 44-year-old was still in incredible physical shape at the time, enough at least for another run as a transitional champion. From psychopath to presidential candidate in 1995, not that those things are mutually exclusive of course, Bob effortlessly morphed once more. He'd never play someone not unhinged again, despite it clearly not marrying up with the quiet and gentle man behind the mayhem. Number 3. Vader. Hard as nails, lobbing rights and lefts at opponents through the netting of a terrifying hood, Vader was persistently one of the most threatening figures in Japan. Just imagine how scary he should have then been in WCW and WWE. Sadly, Vince McMahon's haphazard booking completely butchered his aura by 1998, but his legend somehow remained. Some of it wasn't an act. The Mastodon was a known hard hitter, but had a notoriously soft center. Shawn Michaels once bollocked Vader to tears during the pair's WWE title program in 1996. A premium prima donna at the time, HBK allegedly threatened to have his top challenger fired following a particularly stiff assault during a house show. He infamously lost his rag during their SummerSlam match too, although by then Vader's cards were presumably marked. Referred to as a teddy bear by numerous colleagues over the years, Vader was clearly somebody who relied on the stability of his fragile confidence. Michaels and McMahon eroded it completely, leaving a supposed monster completely beyond rehabilitation. Number 2. The Miz. A tricky one this, in that The Miz used to be everything he still claims. Used to be. A quick flick through the real-world episodes he featured in paints the picture of a loudmouth if good-hearted douchebag. Forcing his gimmick on absolutely anybody in earshot, Miz was a picture of obnoxiousness wrapped in the shell of a too youthful for his own good superfan with an enormous ego. Sound familiar? The version he'd become on television wouldn't stray too far from it despite limp attempts from the company to first utilize him as a babyface host. It morphed again when he returned from filming WWE movie projects as a deluded Hollywood fool. Over those 2 years or so, it's been utterly impossible to separate the man The Miz has become from the impudent imp that still runs his mouth all over SmackDown. A devoted husband and father and every bit the affable man the good-hearted boy was capable of becoming, it's virtually impossible to reconcile the real-life Mike Mizanin with his long-established alter ego. It's a credit to his work that many fans have requested another WWE title run and/or babyface turn, considering the abject failures of both in the past. But it does highlight that his casting as an underskilled dickhead simply doesn't register anymore. Number 1. Broken Matt Hardy. Matt Hardy's career-saving reinvention in 2016 saw him broken from a particularly violent clash with his brother Jeff. But the man behind the madness had never been so whole by the time he found his jagged new edge. For several years, Hardy was beginning to look like another lost cause in the industry. Banished into irrelevance by WWE and trapped in a lifeless TNA run doing nothing to help his cause, Matt's increasingly odd raft of drunken/otherwise influenced YouTube videos were creating serious concern for his physical and mental health. It was only by defeating these demons that Matt could overcome a career hex of getting more over than his brother. Alongside wife Rebby and son King Maxwell, Matt was a force reborn and re-energized by the bonkers universe he was given free reign to create. A glorious WrestleMania return in 2017 vindicated every outstanding move he's made since. While the booking has admittedly had its good and bad points, audiences across wrestling have lapped up every single minute of it. So there you have it, those are 10 wrestlers absolutely nothing like their gimmicks. Let us know what you made of them all in the comments below, and of course don't forget to like, share and subscribe. In the meantime though, thank you very much for watching. I have of course been Adam Cleary, a gimmick played by a 43-year-old black woman, and I'll see you soon.